Think of zoo country as a massive living machine made of millions of tiny moving parts. Every animal is trading, working, and consuming every single day. Keeping a system this big healthy is a delicate balancing act. Meet President Owl. He's tasked with managing the zoo's resources, represented here by these acorns, to ensure the whole population thrives. To keep everyone happy, he has three main goals. First, for the zoo to grow, a job for every animal, and stable, affordable prices for honey. But he also has to look at the big picture, keeping trade fair with the jungle next door, making sure the wealth is shared reasonably across the animal kingdom, and protecting the environment they all call home. To hit those targets, he uses two main tools, known as fiscal policy. These are simply two levers he can pull: taxation and government spending. Taxation is when the government collects acorns from the animals, pulling money out of the economy. Government spending is the opposite. The government puts acorns back into the economy by paying for services or building new things. By manipulating government spending and taxation, he can directly influence how much money is moving through the zoo. Sometimes the gears of the zoo grind to a halt. The beavers lose their jobs, animals start hoarding their acorns instead of spending them, and the zoo's growth stops completely. To get things moving again, President Owl uses expansionary policy. He pushes the spending lever up to build new projects and pulls the tax lever down so the animals have more to spend. By letting animals keep more acorns and creating new government jobs, he gives everyone the confidence to start buying and investing again. This jumpstarts the total amount of spending across the whole zoo. To track this, President Owl uses a chart with a downward-sloping total spending line, officially called aggregate demand. When the government spends more or taxes less, it adds fuel to the engine, pushing this line to the right. As the line moves right, it shows that the total amount of stuff the zoo is producing is increasing, a measurement called real GDP. That physical increase in production is exactly what creates new jobs for the beavers. When the government pays the newly hired beavers, the effect cascades. Those beavers spend their new wages at local businesses, and those businesses hire more workers. This multiplier effect means a single injection of government spending generates a wave of secondary economic activity. We can see this in a cardboard model of the economy. The total spending power, pulled along by the government's injection, shifts the aggregate demand curve firmly to the right. Output rises rapidly. The factories spin back up to their maximum speed, and the beavers return to work. The unemployment crisis is solved. But pushing a domestic economy to run at its absolute maximum speed creates severe internal pressures. When the economy reaches full employment, the aggregate demand curve hits the vertical limit of the aggregate supply curve. The zoo cannot produce goods faster. Demand increases faster than supply, creating demand-pull inflation. Simultaneously, factories compete for workers, creating cost-push inflation. The beavers have jobs, but their paychecks buy less and less. Purchasing power is eroding daily. At the same time, the animals might start buying too many berries from the jungle next door. This sends too many acorns out of the zoo, ruining the record of trade the logbook calls the balance of payments. To fix this, President Owl does the opposite. He raises taxes and stops construction projects. This is called contractionary policy. By removing acorns from the zoo, he cools down the demand for goods. With fewer buyers at the market, sellers have to lower their honey prices to get anyone to buy. On the chart, this cooling effect pulls the total spending line back to the left. As the line moves left, we drop lower on the vertical axis tracking the price level, bringing inflation under control and making honey affordable again. This solves the inflation problem, but it shows the core struggle of the zoo. By cooling down the economy to fix prices, you risk slowing down growth and causing jobs to disappear. But fiscal policy isn't just about the speed of the economy, it's also about fairness. Without rules, the lions might end up with all the acorns while the mice have none. To solve this, President Owl uses progressive taxation. The wealthy lions pay a higher percentage of their income, which the government then uses to build things everyone needs, like schools and hospitals. He can also use targeted taxes to protect the zoo's future. For example, he might tax a factory that dumps mud in the river, using that money to ensure the environment stays sustainable for the next generation. Relying exclusively on shifting short-term demand traps leaders in a continuous cycle. Fixing the unemployment crisis guarantees inflation. Fixing inflation guarantees a recession. Escaping this cycle requires a change in strategy. Instead of constantly manipulating how much the citizens spend, the government must expand the total amount the economy is actually capable of producing. We can see the mechanics of this in an economics text covering stabilization policy. As point 3 notes, fiscal policy that generates supply-side effects will shift both the short-run and long-run aggregate supply curves to the right, expanding the potential level of real GDP. Mayor Al changes his approach. He targets his capital expenditure specifically toward worker education, clean energy subsidies, and modern green infrastructure. Back on our cardboard model, this physically pushes the vertical aggregate supply curve to the right. Aggregate demand now has room to grow, meaning the economy can handle higher spending and employment without hitting the inflationary wall. Expanding aggregate supply is the structural method for achieving sustained economic growth while keeping prices stable. By tying the supply-side expansion to clean energy and efficient infrastructure, the zoo also addresses the environmental tension. Targeted investments show that high economic output does not require high ecological damage. These policies come with a serious limitation: time. Building infrastructure and educating a workforce takes years, offering little comfort to citizens needing immediate relief during a sudden recession. The zoo eventually settles into a steady state. The 6 economic goals are not perfectly conquered, but they are held in a manageable balance rather than oscillating wildly from crisis to crisis. Fiscal policy offers no magic solutions. It is a continuous act of compromise. Effective economic management requires navigating short-term trade-offs while maintaining the discipline to invest in long-term potential. Looking at all these goals together, from jobs to fairness, you can see that fiscal policy is a constant negotiation. Every single choice the government makes comes with a trade-off. To keep track of these complex trade-offs, President Al has to be very precise of his logbook charts. If you're ever asked to draw them, remember to label the bottom as real GDP, the total production, and the side as the price level. Ultimately, mastering fiscal policy means understanding that every acorn the government takes or spends is a choice between competing priorities for the nation's future.